There are simple questions. Questions that make you explore. Explore beyond what you believe. I'm on a journey to meet two unique healers that say they have a direct connection to God, who say they make the impossible possible.
Deborah and I had our first shift in 1997.
There was this beautiful light, and it surrounded me. I could see my body being held in God's arms. I was told that I needed to come back with a new mission and a new duty.
That experience that day changed me. It put us on a different path, and that path has brought us to where we are right now, right here today, doing these healings.
Can God use others as His instruments to perform miracles?
I was in deep trouble and perhaps had a 2 to 10% survival chance. I saw Deborah and Sherry for a healing.
It was very quick to be able to learn the news. My dad was cancer-free.
Does God exist? And if so, where is He?
We're connecting to a oneness, and that energy that Deborah and I connect to, we call God.
We go directly to God, and God is the main frequency. So when we align the three of us to one, that's when the power comes.
They have a special gift that God has given them.
There was a moment where God came into the room. He began to relay a message to Debbie for me.
Can they take people on a spiritual journey to embrace loved ones on the other side?
I have never experienced an out-of-body moment. I could feel his shoulder blades, and I knew without a doubt that my son was present. That was my slice of heaven at that moment.
They say they could do the impossible. Does that mean they could talk to somebody that's in a coma?
I felt such comfort when I knew that Deborah and Sherry had kind of taken over the communication.
He said, look for the rainbows.
I just felt such a wave of relief. It's, oh my goodness. It's almost like having a translator for another language.
I would like to know more. I think this film is going to tell us more about some of the things that they're doing, and to give some insight to people who are skeptical of anything that can't be measured scientifically may in fact contain the key to your own healing.
The answer to the question that they pose at the beginning of the show is, do I believe in healing? No, I really don't. I should. I've been around it all my life with being a personal achievement producer for many, 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 many years with some of the best. But nevertheless, I just don't seem to connect with that world, and I wish I could. That's why I want to take this road trip, to meet these two amazing women in Phoenix, in their realm, without any nonsense. I want to know the truth about this stuff. And had I not been introduced to these two girls by my co-author and agent, William Gladstone, hell, I wouldn't even be talking to you, or myself.
And my good friend Richard Greninger, who at the time owned a small company that leased boats, was going to take us all on a wonderful boat trip. Well, we went to dinner.
We were having dinner with our agent, Bill Gladstone, and his wife, Gail.
And we were all talking at dinner, and we were supposed to meet with Richard, but then plans got changed.
I get a phone call from a friend saying Richard had been, was in the Newport Beach Hospital and had just had a heart attack. So I immediately took the cue.
And then Sherry leaned over to me and said, we should go to the hospital.
Debbie and I had never met Richard, so next thing we know, we're hopping in Bill's car and we're on the way to the hospital to meet Richard.
Really go to the hospital at that moment with our agent, who's never watched or witnessed us do a healing, and we've never done a healing in a hospital before, so this is going to be something that's really different than anything that we have done before.
So we walk in and there's Richard smiling in his hospital bed.
He was very comical. He took things very light and he wanted to make jokes out of everything.
Richard, was joking around at first and kind of laughing, like, who are these girls here? I'm open.
Well, I thought it was fine when they showed up, the good-looking girls show up. Go, this is good, I like to be healed.
But we had to kind of reel him in and say, no, this is serious.
And all of a sudden it got serious, and all of us in the room got serious. Deborah was able to bring forth some words, and we don't know Richard. Where are these words coming from? She was able to tell Richard something that happened when he was a teenager and words that he had spoken to God.
Richard made an agreement with God, that he had a conversation himself with God to make him the very best that he could be, to help in any way for God.
And at the end, he confirmed that, yeah, this did happen.
When Sherry and Deb were healing me, she knew that. She knew I had said that because she said, God said you made an agreement with me that you haven't kept yet. But how would she know about that? That really sunk the hook, you know. Okay, well, let's do some discovery.
Whatever they're doing is working. I would like to know more. I think this film is going to tell us more about some of the things that they're doing and also explore some of the things they're doing with other people and to give some insight to people who are skeptical of anything that can't be measured scientifically or is not part of the AMA-approved practices, may in fact contain the key to your own healing. In any event, Debbie and Sherry did a special healing. I was there during the healing. I didn't really understand what was happening. They didn't touch him. They didn't, have any instruments. So it certainly wasn't a traditional medical intervention. I didn't think much about it. We left. And a few days later, got a phone call from Richard. He's out of the hospital. Everything's going well. He's kind of been, quote, cured. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I didn't think too much, what it meant or if it was just, spontaneous healing. He would have healed anyway. But at least they didn't do any harm. And so that's always a good thing. So since then, they've stayed in touch and continued, I believe, to perform some healing on Richard. And I have to say, he seems healthier than I've seen him in many years.
Well, we're arriving in Scottsdale, Arizona. Kind of hilly, but kind of fun. It's a beautiful place. Wow. Deborah and Sherry live here in Scottsdale. I want to meet them in their church. So I suggest we meet in the house of God. Why not? That's what they all do. So we're going to go to a church down here. And I'm going to talk to them on camera, interview them, and see a little bit about where they came from, what they're doing, and how they do it. Because it's incredibly fascinating to me, and that's why I want to take this journey and find out what makes this stuff tick, So we're going to do that. Here we go.
Not only am I a medium, I am a healer, but I use my mediumship in my healings every day. So I'm different than most mediums. We can see, we can hear, we can speak to spirit. But now I go to a higher level. And what I'm doing is I'm tapping into a frequency and energy where I'm able to connect with a higher source, a divine, what I call my God. And when I connect, I'm able to see the spiritual surgeons come into the room. I'm able to hear if angels come into the room. I can actually hear a frequency where there's a sound, a melody that rings into my ear tones that is so beautiful. I am able to see loved ones from the other side come into the room and give messages, just kind of like a medium would do, but now the person's on the table and we're actually feeling the energy of what's inside their body as well. So I'm being told where this all happened, what was the cause of it, so that we can go to the root of the problem. And that's how Sherry and I work in unison then. If we know the root, if we're told the root by a higher power, God, then we're able to go to that root and actually lift it and heal it and surrender it so that it never reoccurs.
I intuitively feel where I can move the energy. And so what that means is it's very palpable. It's a frequency that I connect to. And I know right away when I connect to it, I can see it in the person receiving it. I see it in their eyes. I put my hands on both sides of their eyes and I see right away I've made the connection. So we're connecting to something, a frequency. And so I'll move up and down the body and I feel it higher in some areas and lower. So I'll know whether to stay in that area or to move from that area.
Sometimes going to the root is painful. We have to go to these spaces that we're not really wanting to go to. That's why it takes an extra person to do it for you, because you may have forgotten. this pain that you just push deep down within you that maybe it happened when you were a child and you don't want to remember it. Well, we go to that root and we make you remember it. And it's not painful for the person on the table. I take on their pain, so I'm the one crying or I'm the one feeling the pain. But they're not denying what's taking place because they're the ones that relate to the information. I don't know anything about them, neither does Sherry, so none of this information really is validated until they go, you were spot on.
When people come in, we don't know anything about them. We like to know nothing, because then you know that it's not us. It's coming from somebody that knows you. Who is that knows you? Somebody that knows it all.
Stories. You know, I'm not big on stories of people telling me. It's like listen to somebody's dreams. You ever listen to somebody's dreams? Oh, does that get boring? But these stories are pretty amazing, and I got one for you.
Now to the overseas search for 22-year-old American Devin Holohan, who disappeared 10 days ago in Frankfurt, Germany. We're going to talk to his father, who's now there, in a moment. But first, NBC's Stephanie Gosk has the latest on this story. Stephanie, good morning to you.
Police are searching everywhere, along riverbanks, down alleyways. They're using helicopters, boats, sniffer dogs. They've even asked Devin's friend from Prague to come back here and retrace their steps from that night. But still, there are no real leads. Investigators say they're running out of options.
For a parent, it's absolutely the worst nightmare that you can imagine. And not only did we lose him, but there was a degree of uncertainty because he was in a foreign country. We didn't know whether he had passed to the other side. We didn't know whether he was injured and needing help. So you have the additional terror, if you will, of not knowing whether your son is alive or passed. Don't know what condition he's in. So there's a lot of unanswered questions.
So my son had been missing for a little while now. He'd been living in Germany, and you know, it's a mother's worst nightmare. What am I supposed to do? I had no idea, so my friend Pam suggested I contact Deborah Martin, who was a medium, and I didn't even know what a medium was. I mean, what's a medium? So I contacted Deborah, and she had to explain what a medium was, that you know she had a connection to spirit on the other side, and maybe she could help me find my son. And the funniest thing she told me was that a raven was going to tell me the answer, and it's like, what the heck does that mean? Some bird's going to tell me the answer?
Okay, Spirit came through to me to tell me that a raven was going to tell Lynn where her son was. Now, even as a medium receiving that kind of information, that's a little out there, but I had to deliver the message. I trusted it. It was something that was so profound within me that I could not deny it. So when I delivered the message, I didn't know what it was going to come from it, but I did know that the raven would be their answer.
So, you know, I told my husband Jeff this, and he just looked at me like I was insane, like some grieving mother.
When Lynn told me that she had connected with Deborah and that I think the quote was, "The raven will show you the answer." And what am I supposed to think at that particular moment? There was definitely some eye rolling going on. I didn't know what that meant. I thought she had lost it. And I also thought she had every reason to lose it. When you are in the situation that we found ourselves in and you're desperate, you will look for anything. You will look to anything and anybody for an answer.
And every time I would walk through the streets of Germany, I started looking at every raven and every blackbird that came my way, and I would have this conversation with them, and it's like, are you my bird? Are you my raven? Are you going to tell me the answer?
At a certain point in our journey to Germany, we realized that there was a very high probability that Devin was gone. He had passed to the other side. We were preparing to fly home without our son. And the thought of that was as horrifying as you can possibly imagine.
It was a long, painful process to get to that point.
And on the last afternoon, a brutally cold, dreary, northern Germany day, Lynn decided that she needed to go down to the river.
As soon as I got close to the river's edge, a raven flew down. And I look at the bird, and I knew right then and there that that was my raven. That was the one that was going to tell me the answer. And I felt this spiritual connection to this bird like none other. And I look at the bird, And I look at Jeff, and I know he's thinking the same thing I'm thinking.
We get down to the river, and I kid you not, the raven flew down right at our feet. And when that happened, I looked at Lynn. Lynn looked back at me. We looked at the raven. The raven looked at both of us.
When I put my hand in the river, the bird took a drink, and I knew that that was the bird. He was telling me the answer, and we found out later that the next day they found our son's body in the river.
After hearing all these stories, I think I'm beginning to rethink my position on this skepticism about the world of beyond.
I went to MD Anderson because it's one of the 2 or 3 top cancer centers in the country. A friend of mine who worked in the field of cancer for 25 years told me that I was going to the best place. At MD Anderson, I saw a very thoughtful, kind physician who told me that based on the information he'd received and when we went back for the spinal tap, I had the spinal tap. About 4 days later, the doctor at MD Anderson called. I had no lymphoma in my spinal column.
The doctor called my parents to let them know that he was cancer-free. My dad was cancer-free. And that was an incredible event for us. And I also know that the traditional doctors who were following my father did not understand how this happened. And I think to this day they don't understand.
A fellow by the name of Mark Victor Hansen told me the story of how he belies himself into the future. I asked him to share a few thoughts with you about that, because I think that's one of the keys to this whole journey I'm on, to have belief in the future and the belief in what you're going to be seeing, touching, tasting, feeling. If you could believe a bit, you could open that damn door, and that gets most interesting.
You know, Albert Einstein said, either everything's a miracle or nothing's a miracle. My life has been overflowing with miracles, and I just want to share with you. I am bankrupt, upside down, nothing's working for me. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, from the beyond, comes this idea. I could be an inspirational, educational, motivational speaker. Go down and talk to my roommates. They say, look, this kid your age is out there doing it. I go sit there, ask him if he'll teach me how to do it. He does. Then all of a sudden I heard that if you kept saying, invoking miracle, miracle, miracle before you go to sleep at night and you inculcate it into your brain, deep into your soul, a miracle will show up. So I said, well, what the heck, miracle, miracle. 2:58, the digital clock reads out and a name comes in. I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. I wrote it down because I knew that was supposed to happen. And the company, State Mutual. Next day I'm out cold calling, 12 o'clock, says State Mutual, walk in. Nobody's at the front counter. His office is at the end. It's his name. And I go, that's a miracle. Now, he gave me $400 in, he said, just a few minutes, because he said, you're so enthusiastic, I didn't know what else to do. Well, that's the kind of miracles that all of us start to have, such that I started seeing miracles in everyone and everywhere I went. And I even had to write a book called The Miracles in You, because I think there's sky vaults full of miracles, not just for me, not just for you, for everyone. And what happens is when you start to notice miracles are little and miracles are big, and you start to think miracles, and the beyond starts to source and serve you miracles on a platter.
Well, I'm editing the film, and I get a call from Sherry and Deborah about a guy named Brandon Johnson, who I guess is a heavy hitter, was a heavy hitter with Disney, had 4 shows going at one time, and really great looking guy, but I guess he hit the wall. Bad things happened, and he got hold of Debbie and Sherry, and they seemed to fix him up. So they said, can you tell his story? I go, well, see what he has to say. What do you think?
What I do for a living is a television host and an actor, and everything was popping. I had amazing shows on the air. I had 4 different shows on the air simultaneously, and I was getting married, and things just couldn't be better. And then, as I moved into the fall of 2013, one by one, these shows all began to kind of fall away, and they fell away very, very quickly, in a way in which I couldn't wrap my head around. Long story short, I began to slowly fall into a very, very deep depression, and there was some momentum to it. And it seemed no matter what I was doing through meditation, through prayer, from reading, and kind of pulling on all of the tools from my spiritual toolbox, I decided to reach out to Debbie and Sherry. And they said, well, what we can do is we can offer a long-distance remote healing. As Debbie was going through her experience, she began to constantly talk about a tube of light that was entering her abdomen, and it was, the spiritual surgeons were really working on her. And it was really, really, really intense for her. There was a moment where God came into the room, or what we define God, or however that's experienced. But to Debbie in that moment, it was God. He began to relay a message to Debbie for me. A very intimate experience. As the words came forward, I absolutely became very emotional because they resonated within me in a way in which I couldn't deny. And certainly when God came into the room and spoke these words, I can kind of feel it. Well, it's still with me. It's still very real for me.
I just saw a young couple, young, like 9 and 12, sitting in the street in a market at the market with a sign that says like homeless thing. That doesn't work for me. I gotta check that. I have a funny thing about people that are homeless on the street, little kids. I'm gonna go up here and see if I can give them a donation or something. Maybe, I don't know. Now here they are, right here. What's going on here? What is going on? Please help. Need job, clean house, and stuff like that. Oh, I see. I gotta give her something. That's how it works. It's tough. You got your mommy. You take care of yourself, okay? Good luck to you. Oh, church for me. That's how church is for me.
There are different levels that I have experienced, and what I believe is God and Mother Mary and angels and saints. I've had experiences with some of them. And one time I was lying in bed and two magnificent beings, very tall beings, awoke me and asked me to go to my office and document everything that I was about to experience. So I went up to my office, got to the computer, and started documenting. The beings took me beyond heaven. I passed heaven. What does heaven look like? Heaven is an existence of the most beautiful colors. There are animals, there are people, there is joy. The colors are so beautiful.
As a student of medical anthropology at Harvard University in the 1970s, I was privileged to study under Dr. Arthur Kleinman and many of the leaders in the field of medical anthropology. We studied contemporary cultures as well as oral traditions and, when possible, written records of spontaneous healing and what we would consider today unexplainable healing. Some of which, for example, among people in the Amazon, included the use of psychedelics, but other methods that did not include the ingestion of any substances whatsoever, and which continue to amaze current scientists and medical doctors as to how some of these methods were in fact effective. If you go back in time, you can find reports, if you're a believer in Jesus, of spontaneous healings, the healing of blindness, and even the raising of Lazarus from the dead. In modern times, some of my colleagues, including William Christensen, who wrote a thesis on miracles in Spain, documented more than a dozen cases of what he considered miraculous healings. These included not only healing from blindness, but also, in certain cases, farm laborers who had suffered falls and become paralyzed regaining movement of their limbs. Now, we can try to explain away many of these miracles, and many scientists and medical doctors just like to use the term, oh, it was a spontaneous healing. They use that a lot when someone is diagnosed with cancer and the cancer miraculously disappears. My suggestion is that we cannot explain away, and we should not use the category spontaneous healing to dismiss what are, in fact, unexplainable healings, which do call upon energies and forces that with greater scientific study, we may in fact be able to better understand and utilize, not in opposition to traditional medical intervention, but as a way of enhancing even operations, heart transplants, and other miraculous gene-based cures that modern medicine is finding. All I am saying is that we need to combine the wisdom of ancient cultures and the reality that there are energies related to healing that we can access that modern medicine and modern science has still not determined the exact specifics of.
Hello again. This is really crazy. This is really nuts. I mean, I've been shooting this film called Beyond for the last 2.5, 3 weeks. Kind of a passion film for me. I'm trying to figure out what this healing is all about, because these two girls came and healed me a year and a half ago or so in the same hospital. Well, I wind up in the same hospital, with AFib, atrial fibrillation in my heart. So Dr. Banker comes in and says, I'm going to do an ablation on you. I said, okay, let's just do that. And they went in there with this high-tech instruments and scopes and all that stuff. Couldn't find anything. Couldn't find anything wrong. That's after Debbie sent what she calls her spiritual surgeons to heal me before he did. And I'm okay. Now you tell me as I lay here in the hospital that something's not wackadoo. This is pretty amazing stuff.
So, I told my doctor that, thinking he was going to laugh at me and just kick me out of the hospital. And you know what he said to me? He said, I believe that. What? I've been, cardiologist for 30 years, and I've seen more things than you could ever imagine that make no sense to me whatsoever. I know there's another side. I know we can't see it. I know it's over there. And I deal with people's hearts all day long. And I know a lot about that heart thing. So don't be afraid to believe that. What's that word again? Well, this is really crazy. This is really crazy. I was coming home in the middle of shooting our film, Beyond, from Deborah and Sherry's healing center. And they did the healing thing, and it was really exciting, truly. I'm a skeptic still, So as I'm driving home, get this. I roll my car twice on the 10 freeway at 80 miles an hour. I had to kick the door open to get out, And it's dark, it's pitch black, dirt everywhere. I scooped the whole friggin' earth up inside the car. When I was rolling upside down, I was hanging on that steering wheel as hard as I could. It's all black, you can't see it, but you are not in where you want to be. And that thing's rolling upside down, my head hits the side of the glass, wham, wham, and it stops in dead silence. And I look around and I'm okay. This is a magical moment. This is something special going on here. I don't know. It's what I call beyond what I can understand. But without question, I shouldn't be okay. In my journey of this project film, Beyond, I think I've been given a key that I didn't have before. The key to the beyond. An understanding that if I believe in the future of what's possible out there, I can taste it, touch it, feel it, maybe be a part of it. In this life, in this world. And of course, maybe beyond after, but right now. And those keys, I think, are extraordinary when people hand them to you. And if they do hand them to you, you can cherish them and really make use of them in your life. Sherry and Deborah had a very interesting thing happen to them together. They had what they call a shift. Well, I call it a head-on crash. They call it a shift. Cool. They had a head-on crash that about killed them. And some people came to save their lives, drug them out of the car. There's a whole story. A good story. So part of the story is why they are different from me and you and what makes that kind of happen. So take a listen to Sherry and Deborah's story about when they had their shift.
Deborah became very sick, and I'm sitting there watching my best friend, very sick, and she was not getting any answers. She went from doctor to doctor. She went to different hospitals. I even took her to the emergency room, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with her.
That was a difficult time for me because I lost all hope. And when you lose all hope, you have nothing.
I was concerned. She had labored breathing.
And all you want is the pain to stop. And you want to, I was asking God, take me now.
On 1/21/12, I woke up in the morning and I had the strongest push. Something within me told me, go to Deborah's house. I didn't question. I trusted. I got up, got dressed, and I shot off to her house without calling her.
Sherry came to my house.
I got to her house. She was surprised. What are you doing here? I said, I came here to pray with you. And I placed my hand on her head. And I had no idea, none of us did, what would happen.
All of a sudden, I was going to take my last breath. And I felt weightless. And I felt like I was floating. I felt actually a sense of calmness come over me where I felt very much at peace. And I could feel myself lifting. I didn't feel like I was breathing anymore. And as I transcended upward, I felt like I was moving up, just slowly, slowly, slowly guiding myself up. And there was this beautiful light, and it surrounded me. And I remember looking around and not seeing anything, but then all of a sudden I saw these hands. They were like this. And then before I knew long, I could see my body being held in God's arms. And immediately I said, oh, I must be really sick, for he's carrying me. And I could see my hair drape down his arm. It was just like a little child being picked up from the couch to be put to bed. So he took my body and he placed it on a beam of light. My body laid on the beam of light, and my spirit stood up. And when the spirit stood up, I knew I was standing in front of God.
She was explaining what she saw and how beautiful and how she felt so at peace and she wasn't in pain. And then she had a conversation with God.
Now, I couldn't see God, but I could feel God. And it's like you don't even have to talk out loud. You're just talking in your mind to him. And I can hear him and he can hear me. I couldn't see God, but I could feel God. And it's like you don't even have to talk out loud. You're just talking in your mind to him. And I can hear him and he can hear me. So the body stayed on the light, and we had a conversation. And God said that we're all born with a life contract. A life contract is like a book. We each have our own story. We have a beginning, a middle, and an end. We all know our beginning. Our middle can be rocky. We can lose hope like I did. Some of us choose not to wait for the ending, and they choose to take their life or to go sooner than they should have. But God showed me that those are the ones that say he shows them the end of the story, and they always have regret. Oh, if I would have only known, if I would have only seen the end of the story. Well, I wasn't shown the end of my story. While I was in heaven, my body still needed to be healed. So while God was having a conversation with me, he sent spiritual surgeons into the room with Sherry. At that moment, the spiritual surgeons began working on me because I couldn't come back unless I was being healed.
Well, Deborah was feeling everything. She was crying out in pain. She was explaining what they were doing to her. And I remember at one point going, we need to stop. We can't continue this, because she was in pain.
Feel the pain, and I would see the spiritual surgeons and go through what I needed to in order for my body to be fixed in order for me to come back.
I knew right away that Deborah had transcended. I felt it on all levels. I knew it intuitively. And I just felt, it was almost like you're seeing a shell of a body, and she's talking, and her shell's there, but her spirit's someplace else. She's explaining it, and I felt it. I knew it. It was serious. Is my friend coming back?
As I was told that I needed to come back with a new mission and a new duty. But I didn't want to come back because I felt so much love. I felt so much peace. I felt safe, and I was no longer in pain. That was so big for me.
And I was there holding her, anchoring her her here and saying, no, 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 this is not your time, you're coming back. That's why I came there that day.
Looking at my body, laying on that beam of light, I knew I had to get back into that body. I didn't really want to. I fought it. I could hear Sherry,
no, 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 this is not your time, you're coming back.
I could have just stayed there for a day or a couple hours because I was in so much pain that this was just for so long that it just made me feel comforted. And I didn't want that pain anymore. It had to stop, and at this moment, it stopped.
When she did come back, I actually saw her body. It was crazy, is the only way I can say it. I mean, who sees this? Her body, I saw it was as if it was, picture a air mattress, and it was, all of a sudden air was going back into it. And I saw her body, it was as if she took a breath, and her spirit went back into her body. And I looked at her and I said, Deborah, is that you that is coming back here? Because I had never seen anything, experienced, witnessed anything like what had just transpired. And she opened her eyes for the first time and she looked at me, and it was odd. It didn't even look like her eyes. And she said, it's me, Deborah, coming back, but I am not the same. And you just go, wow, what just took place? What happened? That experience that day changed me. I'm no longer afraid to die. I know that we are more than just our bodies. We are spirits, that our spirits transcend, that they're able to go places, and that when we leave this earth, our shell will stay here, but our spirits will leave. And that day brought me a sense of peace, because I knew that it's going to be beautiful for the day that I do cross over. And that day shifted both of us. And you know, we couldn't have planned this. We had no idea what was going to transpire that day, but I knew I had a calling, I had a mission, and ever since that day, our healings have increased. Not only did Deborah come back as different, but our lives have changed. Everything in our lives have been shaken, rattled, turned over, and they haven't been the same. But because of this day, our faith in God has grown, and our trust in our path, and it has been beautiful.
Medical records. Yep, medical records. I got these from Deborah and Sherry about some of the folks that they've had some medical healings with. No. Here we go. And take two. Medical records. I got 5 medical records from folks that have been healed by Sherry and Deborah. But I wanted to see the records. I wanted to see the before and the after. So this is an after of a fellow that had a tumor, and it says here, this is exam number 7537008, April 25th, 2014, MRI brain with and without the pituitary gland scan. 62-year-old male. Brainstem and IACs are normal. Mastoid air cells are clear. There's no orbital lesions. Sinuses are clear. Normal flow void of any major vessels. Well, it sounds good to me, but I need to talk to someone who really can tell me, is this stuff really, really real? And before and after? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk to some folks that know just what these mean, and we'll get right to the heart of the matter.
Hey, you know, as a filmmaker, which I've been for some years, you have to make choices. And a lot of these choices come from, well, your audience desires. I don't want to bore everybody to death with this stuff. But it is interesting. That's why I want to take this trip, because it is interesting, this world of beyond, this world of mediums and speaking to spirits and such. But it takes a little time to tell the stories. You just can't click through them like talking sound bites. It doesn't work. So if you're interested in this, I do hope you are. And if you are, stay with these little stories as they come along the road. I'll keep them as short, as concise as I can. And hopefully you'll get something out of them, because ultimately at the end of this film, my hope is that you will get a tremendous relief and a sense of joy from this piece of filmmaking I'm working on. Okay?
My dad looks awful. He was so thin. He could barely walk from the airport to the car, and we had to sit down with him and we said, something's got to be done. This isn't just an allergy. Something is wrong.
We took him in, and they said they were going to keep him overnight. And then they called at 5 in the morning and said, "Are you near the hospital? You need to come immediately. Your husband's condition has changed. He's very, very sick." And we just flew out the door, went to the hospital, and he was already into ICU. And he had this massive heart attack. And then we were in ICU, and that's when Megan said, "Oh my goodness, I have to contact Deborah and Sherry and see if they can do a healing here in the hospital, because we just needed something immediate." Megan called, and very quickly they were just immediately said, no, we're at your disposal, whatever we can do. And they dropped everything and went to their healing center and needed a picture of him, and they got right on it with a distant healing.
I wanted to take a few moments and say goodbye to you folks. It seems like I've known you for a year almost. This has been quite the journey for me, and I hope for you too. I think as this film has unfolded, I've learned a lot about what I call Beyond. And I'm thrilled with what I've learned and discovered it's the real stuff. There's nothing hocus pocus about it. This is the real stuff. In fact, I wrote a little piece that I think I want to leave you with. So here goes the piece. Thanks so much, and good luck to you, and maybe we'll see you in the Beyond.